You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Good to be back from our spring break. I hope you had a good Easter Fool's Day. I did. It snowed twice on my early crocuses and my first narcissi. But they made it through anyway. They were beautiful, poking up through 2 snowfalls. And we've got a fresh spring energy in the air. We have quite a comeback show for you. Prize-winning student newspaper at the Parkland High School that suffered the NRA-facilitated Valentine's Day tragedy. We've got 3 of the journalism students who work on that paper. And if ever there was a resurrection story of hope rising from despair, it's young people like these 3 young women who make that hope incarnate. So let's get started, and first, let's go inside those headlines. Why even attempt to recap 2 weeks of Trump world? Lawsuits, corruption, firings, tweets, rants, international gaffes, gangster operations. Trump congratulates Putin on winning his non-election. Mueller investigation closing in. Trade war. Trump congratulates Xi Jinping on having declared himself president of China for life. Markets plunging, Wall Street furious, farmers pissed. Trump congratulates General al-Sisi of Egypt for winning his non-election. Trump tries to withdraw troops from Syria and put them on the Mexican border instead. And Trump proclaims Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Now, that really should have gone into the surrealism corner. But the real lead story, the one we should be celebrating, is that thousands of teachers in Oklahoma and Kentucky and imminently Arizona are walking off the job, shutting down school districts as they protest cuts in pay and benefits and in school funding in a wildfire movement that has spread rapidly since starting in West Virginia a few weeks ago. The walkouts and rallies in Republican-dominated states, almost all organized by ordinary teachers on Facebook, have caught lawmakers and sometimes the teachers' own labor unions by surprise. What's more, these are occurring in states and districts with important midterm November races. Need I remind us that teachers in this country are almost 85% women? MeToo continues to gain power and speed. Now it's hit Wall Street. A top Morgan Stanley broker was repeatedly accused of violence against ex-wives and girlfriends, threatening to burn down one's house with the woman and her kids inside it, choking another woman so hard he left marks on her throat, terrifying others with threats and abuse. And this took place over 15 years in an upscale Portland, Oregon suburb. Yet the man, Douglas Greenberg, is still one of Morgan Stanley's top financial advisors, and Morgan Stanley executives have known about his alleged conduct all along. Only after the New York Times contacted the bank on April 2nd did Morgan Stanley put Greenberg on administrative leave pending further review of the situation. So Greenberg still is formally employed there, and is a member of the elite Chairman's Club that recognizes brokers who are not only top producers, but who meet certain, quote, conduct and compliance standards. Well, he must be quite a rainmaker. Only that could explain Morgan Stanley's aiding and abetting him, despite his reported record of check theft, a charge eventually dismissed, he knows all the right people, a charge of criminal mischief in the first degree, also dismissed, 2 disputes with clients, and a regulatory penalty, all of which don't even touch on his other non-job-related run-ins with law enforcement and the judicial system, including violating restraining orders taken out by different women, arrests for stalking and criminal trespass, and a history of committing physical and verbal abuse. If by chance anyone listening out there has an account with Morgan Stanley, well, you know what to do to raise their consciousness about what is tolerable and what is not. A quick glance abroad. Polish women are in the streets again by the thousands. The right-wing governing party, the Law and Justice Party of Poland, is making a renewed push to outlaw all abortions, even when the fetus is certain to die in infancy. Poland already has among the strictest laws in Europe against abortion. Over 200 non-governmental organizations wrote a public appeal to lawmakers condemning the proposed law, as did the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. The previous effort to ban abortion was thwarted when Polish women mobilized on a scale unheard of in Poland's history in 2016, when more than 150,000 people rallied in 140 cities, towns, and villages. Now, it's yet to be seen whether these current demonstrations will have a similar effect. Next door in Russia, the place nobody in our White House dares criticize, the unfree, state-controlled Russian press has chosen to act like a free one. On March 22nd, numerous Russian news media outlets vowed publicly to curtail their coverage of the Duma, that's the lower chamber of the Russian parliament, one day after its Ethics Commission exonerated a lawmaker accused of sexual harassment by several female journalists. 24 publications have declared a boycott of covering the 14-member Ethics Commission, and the lawmaker himself, Leonid Slutsky. Yeah, it's Slutsky. I do not make these things up. So some organizations are stopping all professional interaction with Slutsky, whereas others are withdrawing reporters from the Duma altogether. The Duma is widely reviewed as a rubber stamp for the Kremlin, so for state press, itself in the grip of the government, to take such a stand is really remarkable. The boycott was the first public action to focus attention on sexual harassment since the MeToo movement began. Slutsky, whose reported preferred method of attack is to place the inner part of his palm against female reporters' crotches, responded by suggesting that his accusers were part of a Western anti-Russian plot and campaign. Putin himself declined to comment. And last, a note of hope. I know that with everything going on, sometimes one can feel that it's difficult to care about saving small creatures in the natural world without seeming to be a tree hugger inviting radical scorn. Well, the hell with that. Caring is a renewable resource. It looked like the harlequin frog had disappeared entirely from Panama. As recently as the early 2000s, harlequins, who are black and gold, have been easy to find in Panama's high-altitude forests, but more recently the frogs were sick and then found dead and then found not at all. Many of the dead frogs were covered with the same aggressive skin fungus known as, it's a very long name that I will not even attempt to pronounce, as scientists themselves shorthand it by calling it in the initials BD. Well, BD spread from forest to forest and continent to continent, and researchers feared the amphibians might suffer mass extinction. Even today, many species of frogs and toads are still dwindling, and some have disappeared. But the harlequin frog is back. Not in large numbers, but scientists think that as time goes by, they will find more species they had thought lost. It seems it's possible that the immune system of frogs may be the key to the rebound of some species, or their skin secretions, or both. Meanwhile, harlequins are alive again, even though it's not easy being black and gold. We have to take a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, but I'll be right back with a surrealism corner that this week is even more surreal than usual. Stick with us.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back, and let's leap into the surrealism corner. We start with the Sisterhood is Suicide Award to be presented to Connecticut Democratic Representative Elizabeth Esty, who at least did have the grace a few days ago to declare she would not seek re-election and would retire from office at the end of her term. This followed on a great controversy over what she charitably termed her failure to protect women on her staff from sexual harassment and threats of violence by her former chief of staff. She apologized to the betrayed survivor for protecting the man, but her stepping down comes as no surprise, since due to the controversy she would have lost the election by a wide margin anyway. A new study from Live Person confirms persistent gender inequity, big surprise, in the tech world. In a representative sample of 1,000 American consumers asked whether they could name a famous woman leader in tech, 91.7% drew a complete blank. Of the 8.3% who said they could name a tech woman leader, only 4% actually could. And, wait for it, a quarter of those respondents named Siri or Alexa. Yep. These are people for whom the most famous woman in technology is a virtual digital assistant. And, you gotta watch out for that Alexa and Google Assistant. On top of the recent scandals about in-home virtual assistants spying on your habits, likes, dislikes, and other such privacy invasions, Amazon and Google have filed patent applications, many still under consideration, that outline how digital assistants can monitor even more of what users say and do. The great tennis champion Martina Navratilova has accused the BBC of valuing male voices more than female, after discovering that fellow Wimbledon pundit John McEnroe, he of the temper tantrums, is paid at least 10 times more than she is. Martina earned about £15,000 for her commentator role at Wimbledon, while McEnroe garnered between £150,000 and £200,000. Martina said she'd been told she was getting a comparable amount, adding, "We weren't told the truth, that's for sure. It still is the good old boys network." She said that her agent would certainly ask for more money in the future. By the way, McEnroe won Wimbledon 3 times. Martina won Wimbledon 9 times. While you're having an apoplectic fit, factor this in. Joan Baez, whose songwriting and amazing voice defined an entire era, has finally been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Decades ago, when she was already so famous that she was on the cover of Time magazine, she introduced to the world a scruffy kid nobody had heard of named Bob Dylan, and she gave him access to her fame and her contacts. Dylan was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1988, 29 years ago. Now go ahead and hyperventilate. This next item takes flight from the headline, which itself is a classic. Quote, "At the Justice Department's death penalty unit, accusations of favoritism, gender bias, and unwanted groping," close quote. It seems that Kevin Carwile, who was assigned to run the death penalty unit because he was judged as lacking the expertise to steer the gang unit where he had been, has now been removed from his post after the New York Times inquired about a series of grievances against him, including complaints that he promoted gender bias and created a, quote, sexualized environment in the death penalty unit, period, close quote. Norway has a big gender concern, and it's not what you think. Women hold the office of Prime Minister, Finance Minister, Foreign Minister, and Speaker of the Parliament. They're not so good in corporate Norway, where the boys still hold a lot of sway. But Prime Minister Erna Solberg worries that it's a challenge for Scandinavian countries not to end up with a large group of young men who have no purpose in life and no hope for a meaningful job. Does anyone ever wonder about that where women are concerned? Anyway, about 57% of all PhD students in Norway last year were women, and the risk of men falling behind makes them more vulnerable to losing their jobs to automation. The PM is worried about that, and she added, "That's what we see in the angry white men who not only don't like Muslims and immigrants, but absolutely not women either, at least if they can't keep the women to themselves." Foreign Minister Ina Eriksson Soreide says, quote, "This is a massive problem globally. A lot of very vulnerable countries have enormous youth unemployment, and most of them are men. Even in Norway, which is beaten only by Denmark when it comes to equal pay, men still earn 7% more than women on average. And the MeToo movement shook up men in both politics and business, with the deputy leader of the biggest opposition party being forced to resign over sexual misconduct." I love this last item. I love it. I love it. The Vatican was forced to release a terse statement saying that a long article published in the newspaper La Repubblica was, quote, "not a faithful transcription of the Holy Father's words," close quote. The article was by Eugenio Scalfari, age 93, the newspaper's founder, and an atheist who struck up a friendship with Francis in 2013. The Vatican conceded that Scalfari did have a private meeting with the Pope before the Easter weekend, and that they were friends, but it refused to confirm the quotes. No wonder. During the meeting, Scalfari wrote that he asked the Pope where, quote, "bad souls go," and quoted Francis as responding, quote, "Oh, they're not really punished. Those who repent obtain God's forgiveness and take their place among the ranks of those who contemplate God. But those who don't repent and can't be forgiven just disappear. Oh, hell doesn't really exist, you know." Close quote. Uh-oh, Francis made a naughty, and the Holy See was blindsided, forced to deny the fact that the Pope doesn't believe in hell. Why, this is the Surrealism Corner. Nor are we out of it. Time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. When I return in just a moment, it will be for a conversation with 3 young women who are sophomores at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Yes, that high school, that Valentine's Day, that tragedy, which they not only witnessed and endured, but which they have turned into activism and reporting. And that's especially why they're with us today. That's coming right up.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again. You know, no reporter ever wants to be the story. Becoming part of the story is any journalist's worst nightmare. But what happens if you're 15 years old and a high school sophomore, and you're a journalist at the high school paper, and you become the story? And you live through it, and you somehow turn it into activism, and fight back, and you somehow turn it into reporting. That's what my guests today have done. Brianna Fisher, Leni Steinhardt, and Zoe Gordon all write for the Eagle Eye newspaper at MSD High School in Parkland, Florida. And the motto of the Women's Media Center is making women visible and powerful in media. And it couldn't describe better Brianna, Leni, and Zoe, who are with us today. Brianna and Leni and Zoe, welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I want to start by offering you profound sympathies and and regrets for your loss and what you've been through, and also profound respect for the way that you and your colleagues and classmates have turned real grief and terror into action. Thank you, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Well, let's ease into the telling of the story, because I feel bad about even asking you to tell it, as you have had to again and again and again. Let's start first with the Eagle Eye. You are all on is it a staff or a collective of the Eagle Eye newspaper for MSD High School?
It's Leni talking. So we are a staff, and we release a magazine newspaper quarterly. Mm-hmm. We just released our recent, we just went into print for our third quarter, and we all work collectively. We are all in one room together, different periods. The three of us are all staff writers. Mm-hmm. And this is here. And for our third quarter, we actually did a memorial issue to basically honor the 17 victims and tell everyone how they lived and their story. And then for the fourth quarter, we did we're planning to do a more political issue and to focus really on the activism that everyone has been doing.
Wow. I know that you also were part of the Eagle Eye group that edited and wrote an issue of the Guardian newspaper that they sort of turned over to you, and did a superb job, I might add. The piece in particular, The Guardian, Our Manifesto to Fix America's Gun Laws, by the editorial staff of the Eagle Eye, which listeners can still get online, is a real breakdown point by point of, what it is that has to be fixed, which you'd think by now the whole world would know, but apparently it doesn't, and this is a very cogent telling of it. Does your participation in the newspaper mean that you all, or some of you, want to be journalists?
Hi, I'm Zoe. This whole tragedy kind of made me realize my true passion for journalism. I was kind of debating always between if I wanted to do medical or something else or business. But journalism, I've really found my true passion and how to just the power of words, basically.
It's Leni talking. I always loved writing. I was definitely more of an English nerd than math or history. I always wanted to study journalism in college, and I think after the tragedy, I saw the good side of journalism and I saw the bad side of journalism. Right. But I think the good side overweighted the bad side, and I think that's really the career path I want to go down.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, we need you, and it's with great pride that the Women's Media Center exists and hosts you today. When the tragedy happened, and some of your friends began appearing as spokespeople, I became fixated on wanting women from the Eagle Eye. Because it's a women's media center, and I wanted those of you who I knew would not only communicate the suffering and the aftermath as young human beings, but also as young reporters. And we're grateful for that too. Okay, I'm sorry, but to make you tell the story, each of you again, but concrete, experienced, stories communicate best the reality of what you lived through and still live with. So if you didn't mind, each of you just giving a brief version of that horrible day.
Well, this is Brianna talking. And for me, I was in my AP World History class during the fourth period, which is our last period of the day, which is the farthest a class can be from the freshman 1200 building. So we were just finishing a presentation, and everyone was getting off their props and changing when we heard the fire alarm. So everyone kind of exited, and we walked downstairs and down a field and by like through fences and around the middle school, which is next to our high school, and through like a canal and a fence where you had to walk one by one. And I was able to meet my mom at the Walmart, which was next to the middle school. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty lucky and I was able to escape as other people weren't.
My story, this is Zoe, by the way. So I had a different experience than Brianna because I was stuck in my classroom for 2.5 hours. So we heard the second fire alarm of the day. I was in my math class. We just finished our math lesson, and I was putting my stuff away. I was putting my books back in my backpack and cleaning up, and then all of a sudden we heard the fire alarm. So then we walked a couple feet outside of our classroom, and then all of a sudden we heard gunshots, but it didn't sound like that at the time. And I was in a classroom very close to the freshman building. Like my class is like adjacent to it, so I heard the screams. It sounded like things were falling, and then all of a sudden I saw our police officer running with his gun out up my stairs, which is in a different building than the freshman building, so I was kind of confused. And then I heard a teacher yell, who wasn't my teacher, everyone back inside. So then I went back to my classroom, and I urged my class to go back inside my classroom, and we had our door locked. We were just sitting in the corner. Surprisingly, it was kind of calm because it hadn't hit everyone yet. So then we waited. I was texting friends and family. They were freaking out, and I didn't understand kind of what was happening until they were telling me the news, but I was still in shock. And everything hit me when the FBI came in 2.5 hours later. We knew it was them because we heard them knocking down all the other doors. So it wasn't a surprise when they came to us. And we walked. I found my friend Leni, who is here right now, and we walked trying to find our parents. It was so chaotic. I just wanted to go home. And it was the longest day of my life.
It's me talking now. I definitely have a different experience than both Zoe and Brianna. I was in chemistry at the time in the building next to the freshman building. We were in the middle of taking notes when I heard the first gunshot go off. We all looked to my teacher and kind of looked around the classroom, kind of saying what was that? Almost. It was Valentine's Day, so a lot of us just expected that a balloon popped or someone dropped a textbook in the hallway, which happens a lot more than you would think. And then not even 10 seconds later, the fire alarm went off, which was odd because just second period that day, we had a fire drill. And a lot of times our teachers are informed of these drills, and my teacher was just as confused as the rest of us. We exited the classroom, and that's when I heard gunshot after gunshot after gunshot. I kind of just froze. I didn't really know what I was hearing. I've never heard gunshots before. I looked to the floor below me. We have a courtyard outside. I saw so many students just running and screaming in the opposite direction. So I kind of just followed them. I ran back down the hallway, down a stairwell. Midway down the stairwell, someone screamed that it was a code red, which means there's a shooter on campus. So I ran back up the stairs where two librarians pulled me and a friend into this teacher's lounge in the back of the library. I hid in the pitch black for about 2 hours until SWAT knocked down the door. After switching various rooms and then kind of counting how many of us we were, we finally escaped the high school. And then I was able to walk down this long road where I found Zoe, and we kind of just held hands, like, what just happened? Like, how did that just happen? Until I finally ran into my mom's arms and she took me home. But it was definitely the most horrifying day of my life.
And you're all 15 years old, right?
I'm actually 16, but we're all sophomores.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Zoe and Brianna Zoe, yeah, we're both 15.
Wow. I mean, to have to say I survived this living hell when you're a 15 or 16-year-old sophomore is something no 15 or 16-year-old sophomore should ever have to say. I think many people think that this was bad and terrible, but it's over and done with now. Pick up and, get on with it. And don't understand the long wake that it leaves like a boat in water, of after effects, of traumatization, of night terrors, of, which I assume that you're getting help with. But if you could each address that in some way, I mean, are there triggers? Are there, I know it doesn't just end on Valentine's Day. This I know damn well.
Yeah, it's Leni speaking. Triggers are definitely a thing. Just today, there was a loud noise in one of my classrooms from one of the intercom systems, and we all jumped. We didn't really know what the noise was, and we just assumed that something bad was going to happen, where, in fact, someone was just being called to the office. I can no longer walk down the same hallway I ran down, as well as any faint noise of any kind of gunshot kind of sound scares me. I kind of like to tell people, if you survive a plane crash, you're most likely never going to be on a plane again. We survived a school shooting, and we have to go back to school for another 2 years.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people don't really realize that extent of the fear a lot of us have.
This is Brianna, and I completely agree with Leni, because even though people in different areas may see this on the news and think, oh, this is awful, and then go back to their everyday work, we're not going to have the same normal that we had before. And everything's definitely changed. And especially, no one else is the same anymore. Everyone has different triggers or something that can freak them out. So it's just different for all of us.
And just like how other events seems like mass shootings and then people forget, the thing is, it's going to be different for us, because us Douglas students, we're not gonna stop our fight until we get what we want. And I know that for sure. I'm not just saying that to say that, but if the media stops covering us, we'll get a way back on it. We'll find a way to talk about it. We're going to keep talking about it, keep making marches like the March for Our Lives and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's Leni speaking again. There was too long of a waiting period between Columbine and Sandy Hook, and I think that no change occurred then. And just in 2 months since our shooting, we've already accomplished so many different law changes and so many different goals that we've reached. And I think we really want to show the world that we're the change. We're going to make the changes that past generations couldn't. And I think it's really important to know.
You are doing precisely that. And let me say before I forget, you always are welcome here. I hope you won't be needing to be on media. I hope you'll be media, but because I hope you will have one. But as long as you need an airing of this issue, this program is at your command. So if media is so stupid as to ignore you ever in the future, you got a home right here. I can promise you that. I read somewhere, I think it was you, Zoe, who said that you were also suffering survivor guilt. That when you have a moment of relief or happiness, then of course you feel guilty because what the quote that just moved me so was, "Why am I being rewarded for having friends shot by bullets?" Is that still with you?
Yeah, because especially when our newspaper staff, we took a trip to New York shortly after the tragedy, and I still wanted to go because I thought it was like a convention at CSPA, something to learn for journalism, and we also got a lot of opportunities out of it. We got to go to NBC and tour the studio and meet Rachel Maddow and all these cool people, and that's kind of when it hit me, what if this tragedy didn't happen, I wouldn't be meeting these people. And it could have been me who didn't make it out, and it could have been the people who died in that building that got these opportunities out of it. Our roles could have switched. So sometimes I think about it, and it makes me feel guilty because it could have been me if it was a different day or a different time in that building.
Yeah.
This is Brianna speaking, and I completely agree with Zoe, because it's not just that you feel guilty that it could have been you. You also feel guilty when people call you like a survivor, for example, because I was able to evacuate, but then it was like Leni and Zoe who were stuck in their classroom. And then to the next level, people that were near the freshman building, and then people that were actually in the freshman building, and then the people that didn't actually survive. So it's just you feel guilty for being called a survivor when really you were as lucky as you could have been in that situation.
Yeah.
It's Leni speaking. I think there's other different extents of this guilt. I think I definitely have good days and bad days, but on those good days, I always ask myself, like, should I be happy right now? Like, is it acceptable for me to be smiling right now when, you know, other people aren't? And I think my mood always changes throughout the day, and I never really know how I'm feeling.
It's Zoe again, and along with what Leni said, it's a hard feeling because you don't want to be okay. When you're happy, you're going to want to be sad, and if you're sad, then you wish to be happy. So it's just a hard feeling because whatever you're thinking about, your mind like comes back to what happened that day really fast.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you this much for what it's worth. There really is, I think, for real grief, no such thing as closure. Even though everybody bandies the word about closure, I don't think there is such a thing as closure. But I do know that there is such a thing as distance and time. And those approximate closure. You don't have to feel guilty for forgetting for a moment or not being totally fixated on the tragedy and on the mourning. You're not betraying any of your friends that you lost. Life is kind of merciless in its insistence on going on. If you've ever seen, crushed landscapes after a volcanic eruption, the growth returns even stronger. And I think that something like that probably will find its way to you because the way already you're handling this, when somebody of among the three of you, I can't remember who said something earlier about maybe it was on Rachel's show. I was a girl whose biggest problems before this was having two tests in the same day and wondering if my crush liked me back. And then this hits. But the tremendous sophistication with which you have been handling the psychological complexities of this, is pretty fantastic. And there's no way around it except to go through it. I mean, whoever tells you anything else is trying to sell you something. But, so you go through it and you have each other and you have things like the march. Talk about the march. Presumably you all went, yes?
Yeah. We actually all went with the Eagle Eye and with the newspaper.
And you went to Tallahassee first, and there was the school walkout. I love the way that these are coming in real waves. I mean, there's no letting up.
Yeah.
And how did you find when you looked at the march and heard about it in, I think over 800 countries or something like that? How did that make you feel?
It's Leni speaking. I know it shows so much love and support we have across the country. There are some hate, in a sense, for what all the MST students are doing. But I think, like I was saying before, the love overpowers the hate in this. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just so amazing to see how many people are are joining with us in this and saying, you know what, like, we really need to create a change. Like, something needs to happen because we can't let this happen again.
Yeah. It's crazy. This is Zoe speaking, by the way. It's just crazy to think, like, how many people know about, like, what we're doing. It's because when everything was happening, I was so shocked when my parents found out, who live in the same house that I do in Parkland. And now that it's spread nationwide and in different countries, it's crazy that everyone's supporting us. How we see all these walkouts from all these different schools and all these banners around our school from different places.
Well, this is Brianna, and I completely agree with both Zoe and Leni, because at first when they announced the march, you're just looking at the news and you're thinking it's crazy because these are kids from my school. Like, I pass these kids every day in the hallway. And then when we actually got to the march and to see people setting up the equipment and giving, like, out press passes, you're like, oh, those are working for my friends. Like, I know who that is. So I think it's just really overwhelming to see all the love and support and the people who are standing behind us and trying to help us so that we can accomplish our goals.
And you're like a family for each other, aren't you? I mean, because you've been traveling
yeah.
around. Yeah.
We know each other a little well.
This is a different kind of sleepover when you go to a different city to do television programs or to speak at marches with, you know, 1 million people listening. But you seem to have an equanimity and balance that probably is coming from each other and keeping you solid. I was amused and saddened to hear the shock with which many older media people pronounced that you were so articulate. I mean, as if they had suddenly lifted a rock and you had crawled out from under, you know. And I thought to myself, that's what they always say about people they don't listen to. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. It just means they weren't listening. And for the first time, you forced them to listen. You've always been trying to say your reality. And this was a propeller of monstrous proportions, but you're riding the wave of it. And I'm so glad you have each other.
Thank you.
No,
I would like to add to what you're saying, actually. I think prior to all of this, you know, people higher up than us, adults in the world, kind of look at us as, oh, they're just students. Well, now we've kind of changed the discussion, and now they're looking at us like they are students. Like, maybe we should listen to them, kind of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a real power. And it's not power over. In the old way, it's power to. But it's a real power, and the power of the word, which one of you mentioned earlier, whether it's through journalism or writing or lobbying, or, I mean, all of those ways that move humanity forward, you have in your toolkit, and you have a long life ahead to use it, and to the great benefit of your society. And I hope also that you understand that this power, I mean, right now, it's quite proper that it be focused on changing attitudes and changing the power structure that keeps guns proliferating at an epidemic in this country. That is the focus, and we hope to turn it all around in the fall with elections and turn it around with lobbying. But I hope you realize that this can be applied to whatever you believe in, and you can take it through an entire lifetime of helping to save the world and save each other. You do know that, of course.
Of course,
yeah. Well, Zoe and Leni and Brianna, I'm very grateful that you were here with us, and I hope you will return. So consider yourselves reporters for Women's Media Center Live. To you, we will go back, if you don't mind, every time that there's a new development or a new bill, and please feel free to contact us when there's something that you want to get said, because we are here for you.
Mm-hmm. We'll definitely take you up on that offer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Time for one last brief pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll return directly with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again to some fighting words. Last Monday, April 2nd, 2018, Winnie Mandela died at age 81. She was a political, psychological, spiritual, tactical, emotional, strategic, and military commander and leader in South Africa's fight against apartheid. Her legacy was tarnished deliberately by her enemies in the apartheid system and by rivals in the liberation fight, and her marriage to Nelson Mandela, most of which was spent apart during his 27 years in prison, finally imploded. Her name was smeared again and again. Now it's been announced that the state will give her a state funeral, because nobody could come between her and her love of the people and their passion for her, whom they trusted. On this program in February 25th to be exact, episode 238, one of my guests was Pascal Lamche, a filmmaker who has lived for years in South Africa and who has produced a remarkable film which we discussed called simply Winnie. You can still access it on Netflix, and it's begun a theater run in many cities around the world. South Africans see it as rewriting and uncovering their real history. It is an amazement, and it validates who Winnie Mandela really was. My tribute to her, which will be this week's Fighting Words, is a simple poem that I wrote years ago and collected in my book Upstairs in the Garden. It's a poem called Arbitrary Bread, and a section of it is about Winnie. I was told to take that section out because when the poem was first being published, she was in disrepute, and I left it in. If the scandals were true, so be it. It didn't mean that she hadn't done the other things. If the scandals were not true, all the more reason to stand up for a sister. I'm so glad I left it in. History has absolved the poem, and more importantly, it's absolving her. Go and find the film if you can, called Winnie. And these are some excerpts from the poem Arbitrary Bread. Men make impressions, arbitrary decisions, names for themselves, wars, profits, laws, reputations, deals, fortunes, threats, enemies, promises, tracks. Women make do, ends meet, babies, way, clothing, breakfast and dinner and supper, quilts, homes, apologies, baskets, beds, light of it, room. Beginning again, unlearning how to make jokes, compromises, and bargains, the best of it. Relearning how to make trouble, a living, a practice of politics. Cracking wheat, crushing millet, dissolving salt crystals, pounding the dough, waiting the first rise, reshaping the dough, waiting the second, heating the oven of metal or clay. Winnie Mandela stands outside the smoking timbers of what yesterday was her home. She stares. She does not enter. Lost articles, inanimate, speechless things, flare to mind, each vivid, crisped with grief. The books, the diaries, the humble gifts from ordinary people, the wedding pictures, the letters, 30 years of them, from him in prison, while she raised the children, carried messages, was banned, was under house arrest, in jail and out again, while she made visits to him, made speeches, made an example of herself, was made his symbol, was made a metaphor for freedom. Men manage to make their revolutions from abstractions, but no slogans can be made from the thoughts of a woman sifting the ashes of her life. The last bed in which they ever slept together, gone now. The baby pictures, the headscarf her mother left her, the recipes, the saved invitations to far countries where she could not go, the mirror she aged in. Over and over, practicing how to make a fresh start, making the most of knowing the worst of it, not what's assumed, that they can torture, degrade, kill, erase you, but this, that they can just tire you out. Again and again, learning how to make peace, cracking open the whole grain of anger, crushing the fear, dissolving the sense of futility, deliberately making believe, pounding, shaping, reshaping the act, arbitrary, but this time our own. I want to make this so plain that every woman can feed herself with it. Make it her own, make it mean what she chooses, make demands of it, make it available, make mischief, a difference, a miracle, ready. I want to say this in the quietest voice possible. Give us this day our arbitrary bread. Do I make myself clear? Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter and be sure to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMCLive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.